In today's Science Chat, we look at some new spacesuits for astronauts and a super glue made from mussels.
But first, have scientists really found a way to reverse the ageing process? AUT Applied Science Professor Steve Pointing is in to tell us. Good morning, Steve. Can we actually reverse ageing?
Well, it's one step closer, I'll say that. I think right now the answer would be no, but there's been a really quite significant discovery coming out of the Salk Institute in San Diego. And what they've discovered is this, that the time clock that essentially counts down our cells towards the process where they age and become dysfunctional is essentially controlled by something called telomeres. These are little stretches of DNA on the ends of our chromosomes. And I guess the best analogy is they're a little like pieces of plastic on the end of shoelaces. They stop the shoelaces fraying. Well, these things called telomeres do the same to our chromosomes. They stop them being degraded during cell replication. So what this team have discovered is that there is an enzyme that can rebuild that telomere and stop it being eroded over time, and thereby could halt the aging process. And what they've discovered is that there is essentially an on-off switch for that telomerase, and that effectively we should be able to turn that switch on and off and thereby control the degradation of those telomeres.
And it has some implications for cancer research as well, does it?
Well, yes, potentially, because cancer cells effectively are immortal cells. And in cancer cells, the telomeres don't become degraded because this enzyme is constantly being expressed in the cell. And so if we could do the reverse and turn off that enzyme, we could potentially halt the spread of cancerous cells.
Moving on to shrink-wrapped spacesuits. NASA's designed something new for astronauts.
Yeah, and these look great.
Sounds very trendy.
Yeah, they look truly space age, yes. So, if you look at astronauts now, you see they have very clunky suits. And the reason is that you have to create an atmosphere within those suits to simulate partially the Earth atmosphere so our bodies can function in space. But what this team at MIT have done is use something called shape memory alloys, which are metals that can remember shapes they've previously assumed. And they've built those into these new suits, which effectively, instead of creating a gas atmosphere inside the suit, what they do is they apply direct compression to the skin, and that simulates an atmosphere and allows the body to function. So they're essentially skin-tight spacesuits.
What about the safety and security issue, though? Will they feel as safe as one of those huge suits that we see astronauts wear?
That's interesting. Well, in theory, they should be, yes. One needs to build in heat protection and other factors too. But the great thing about these smart suits, of course, is that you can also make them self-repair. So yes, in theory, they should be just as safe.
Now, scientists have made underwater superglue from mussels. Is this for kids' paper mache or...?
Oh, good grief, I have enough trouble getting my son's glue off the kitchen table. No, this is quite an interesting example of how biotechnology has done something beneficial. So mussels, if you've ever tried to pry them off the seashore, they're really hard, stuck onto the seashore. And this is because they make a glue which is made of very sticky proteins. So what scientists have done is take the gene that encodes that sticky protein and stuck it into a bacterium that also makes another type of protein called curly fibres. Now, when you have both curly fibres and the mussel sticky protein together in this bacterium, it creates this amazing superglue. And the great thing about it is it works underwater. So the idea is that, of course, we could apply this to the surfaces of hulls underwater and structures underwater to repair them.
Yeah, so who could take advantage of that, of such a strong superglue for underwater conditions? Well,
the research was funded by the Office of the Navy in the US, so the obvious application is in military ships. But of course, any wet or aqueous environment could benefit. So I'm thinking of power stations and other situations where you need to repair something, but you can't afford to let it come out of the wet environment.
Oh, very interesting. Thank you very much, Steve Pointing. Thanks for coming in this morning.